say, or is that something that you'd like to say something?
I have a question.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things that ran the flag up for us was when you said that love is the center of this whole thing. And
yes.
Back in the early 80s, John Wheeler, who discovered the black holes and went from Princeton to the University of Texas and back to Princeton, a smart move, he said that when the unified field, as he called it, is finally written, love will be either the subject or the verb. And I'm sure that was prescient beyond anybody's imagination, and here you show up on the scene, and that's exactly what you're saying.
Love is the reason. Love is the point. Love is the purpose. And why? Because this is a big digital information system that is evolving, and the most evolved state of this digital information system is love. Remember we had those two groups? Well, where you get your most data, where you get your most organization, where you decrease your entropy, is love, is caring. That's the state that you have to evolve to. So that's where we're all going.
So that's the goal of evolution.
That's the goal. It's either evolve or die. So if you're this big information system, you have two choices. You can lower your entropy or you can increase your entropy. Staying the same is unstable. That doesn't work. You can keep it kind of the same for a while, but eventually you're going to drift to this way or that way. So it's evolve or die. Die means dissolve, disappear, become nothing, back to randomness again.
So in a system like we're living in right now in America, where we're watching the rise and fall of civilizations or empires, civilizations or empires fall because they're not evolving toward that love state. Is that a fair thing to say?
That's probably true. It's a very simplified version of it, but what you see when you look at the nightly news or read the paper or that sort of thing, and you see all this awful stuff going on all the time, well, of course, there's a couple reasons for that. One, awful sells and nice doesn't. Okay, so the awful is collected from all over, and that's what we get to see. So that's one reason we see it. But the second thing is, and most important, is it is the way it is because we are the way we are. What you see out there in the world is an honest reflection of what we are inside at the being level. Those are the kind of people we are. We're full of ego. We're full of, what about me? That's the ego. We're full of fear. And you have love, you have fear. Those are the opposite things. Well, fear then generates things like ego, expectations, wants, needs, desires. All that stuff gets generated out of fear. Okay. Love generates things like compassion, caring, empathy, all that sort of stuff generates then out of love. Well, you have a bunch of ego-driven people full of fear all over this planet because that's the level at which they have evolved. That's just the way it is. This is not a graduate school or even a college. This learning lab that we're in, that we call our universe, is more like daycare. Maybe kindergarten, and that's the level that we're at. We have a long way to go. But it's not a closed system. New entities come in all the time and some can go. So then here we are living in this reality. What you see is what we are. We create this. If we were all loving, caring people like this first group I talked about, we wouldn't live in a world like that second group we were talking about. We'd live in a totally different kind of place. And then it really wouldn't matter so much the system we use. We talk about these, I guess all of them are really utopian systems: capitalism, socialism, communism, and there's other isms, and then hybrids of all of those that solve all the problems, keep all the good parts, and so on. So you have all these systems. They're all utopian systems. Each system says, well, if we just did this, everything would be wonderful. So we'd have utopia. Well, it doesn't work. It's not that the system's bad. It's that the people in the system are full of fear and ego. So we are what we are. If you had that first group where we were all loving and caring, the system really wouldn't make a whole lot of difference. Whether we were capitalist or communist or this, or it would be kind of irrelevant because it wouldn't matter. People would be doing the right thing, caring for each other, taking care, nobody be trying to rip anybody off. It wouldn't be what about me, it'd be what can I do for you? And the system's kind of irrelevant. So we look for a utopian system to force ourselves to be and act better than we are. It doesn't work. We are who we are. This is what you get. Is what you see is what you get when you have a bunch of people controlled by fear and ego.
So are we reaching a tipping point somehow or another where we're going to just roll over into this higher level of lower entropy?
Okay, are we reaching a tipping point? You know, that would be a nice thing. Well, you know, tipping points can tip both ways, can't they? I assume you are tipping toward love, or not tipping away from it. But
well, there's people keep talking about higher consciousness and the shift in consciousness and the evolutionary shift and all this in 2012.
Right.
But is there something happening that's a little bit out of the ordinary even for us?
Well, I'm not sure of that. I think that definitely something is happening. How out of the ordinary, I'm not real sure. Something is happening because we have gone, let's say go back 20 years or 30 years. We lived even more fear than we do now. So if you look at the last 5 or 6 years, it's almost like, you know, everybody feels a lot better. We're less fearful. We're more hopeful than we were 20 or 30 years ago. So yes, you can get this sense of spiritual energy is building, and indeed it is. Mm-hmm. That's true, but partly that's because the drums of fear are quieted a bit. So whether or not this is going to be some universal kind of tipping point and everything is going to get better after that, I kind of doubt that for this reason. We're here to evolve. We're here to grow up. You can only grow up from the inside out. Nobody can make you grow up. Now, you can be given an environment in which it's easier to grow up because we're all netted. So if we hang out with a bunch of marvelous, loving people, it kind of makes us feel good, you know, and we tend to move a little bit in that direction ourselves.
You bet.
If we hang out in a mob, you know, that's why mobs have mob psychology, because they all sink to the lowest common denominator to people in that mob, and the mob acts worse than any one of those people in the mob would act on their own. Well, around a bunch of loving people, everybody acts better than maybe any one of them would if they were out left alone. It works both ways. That's because we're all netted. We communicate with each other. We share. We pick things up from each other. We get the sense of it. And of course, love is a sweet, nice, very comfortable way to go. That's very attractive. We tend to move in that direction. And the more of it you have, the more of it you get. So it is self-building, if you will. Yeah. So it is possible, if we have a big motion in that we start to drag a lot of people with us, right? And they become part of it, and that drags more people. So it can be like a wave. It can grow and grow, and the more it grows, the bigger it can grow. But it works the same way on the other side. If we start with the fear and with the needs and the wants, and it's all about me, that drags people down into that same idea, you know, and that can also grow. So it's like anything, you know, the more money you make, the easier it is to make more money, right? The more love you get, the easier it is to get more love. These things all build on each other because we're all these individual pieces. We're all netted together. We're all sharing this thing. And yes, so it's possible, yes, that we could keep, you know, building the momentum. It's, but that means that we're all helping each other learn and grow. We've created a better environment for changing ourselves, making it easier for people to change. So that's, you know, and I'm hopeful that this kind of momentum that we've started to see over the past 6, 7, 8, maybe even decade, it goes back. You know, it was always there before. We had this in the 60s. You know, you guys are my age, right? I'm 66. You know, you're in that same category. Yeah. And, you know, that was a big momentum. Suddenly, you know, peace and love and caring and no to war, you know. And that was a big surge, but it didn't last. You know, it went on and into it kind of picked up speed and was going good in the 70s, and kind of in the 80s it got a little more self-focused, and by the 90s it's what's in it for me, and we kind of went down the other side. So I don't know that this is going to be any different than that. So I've seen it happen before, and not just keep right on going, but I'm always hopeful. Sure, do it. Let's keep this wave building as much as we can. But I do see that we are approaching a break point, or tipping point, as you see, for some reasons. And one is that if we realize that this reality is a virtual reality, we are here to love. Again, if you know what the game's about, you're a better player. You take it more seriously. You're more involved in growth. Otherwise, you're just kind of here doing what you do, and you don't really have the focus. If we understand that, if science realizes that you can do better physics as well as better metaphysics, as well as integrate the paranormal and the normal, and all the stuff now makes sense, then suddenly you won't have these two camps warring with each other, which is the Objectivists. This is it. This is all we have. This is a physical reality. There is nothing else. There can't be anything else. And if you think there is, you're stupid, or you're just confused, or you're kidding yourself, or you're having hallucinations. So we have this group that is having that kind of mind frame, right? And then we have this other group is, no, this is real. I'm not imagining it. Da 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 da. And each group thinks the other is a little retarded, right? Gee, those scientists are slow. They just don't get it. I mean, they're all right with their numbers and stuff, and I like the devices that they build, but they're really lost when it comes to the bigger picture. And then the scientists are saying, oh, those New Agers, they are so dizzy. They convince themselves that all this stuff is real and it's just in their imagination. So we have this bifurcated thing, these two poles, and they stay separate. But if we saw it all as science, you see, the larger reality, the continuation. See, consciousness is continuous. You don't die. There's no such thing as death. Your consciousness now, imagine you have a body, and when this body goes away, your consciousness, in another reality frame. You're not in this virtual reality frame anymore. There's lots of virtual reality frames, and this is not the only one that works like this. A lot of them do. That when you die, where you go is a different virtual reality frame. That's not the reality either. It's a virtual reality frame. When you dream, you're in another virtual reality frame. When you go out of body, you're in a different, you're in just different frames, different points of view.
So what you're calling frames, we might call dimensions.
Yes, frames and dimensions would be similar, and these dimensions have to do with your own perception, your own beliefs, your own, and kind of the activity that goes on there. Like, so here we have a universe, and this Earth that we live on is part of this universe, and this universe is a big virtual reality game. Okay, and it's here for us to learn, to interact with each other, because relationship is where the traction is. See, that's where you get the growth. That's where you get the interaction. It's in relationship with other people that you have the opportunity to make choices that are entropy reducing, choices toward love, choices toward kindness, choices toward caring about other as opposed to self. Relationship is the key thing. It's not really about the stuff. It's not about the props that are here, which is all the stuff. But you see, relationships have a lot of uncertainty in them, don't they? Lots of uncertainty in relationships and in people and interactions. So those are easily modified with intent. If you have a loving intent and you care about another person, good things just seem to happen. You're creating this positive reality for yourself. It's different. Now, the hard sciences, they deal with stuff. Like here's a wood, and it's got a specific gravity, and it's got mass, and it has all these properties, and that's just the stuff. Well, okay, it's stuff. So we live in stuff because this is our because this is our virtual reality. It gives us context. It gives us a stage on which to play, right? But there's very little uncertainty with it. We can measure this down to the gnat's eyebrow, and there's not a lot of uncertainty there. So guess what? It is pretty objective. So you see what happens when you realize the world is not objective. It's not that physics as we know it now gets thrown out as not being right. It just becomes a subset. It becomes the subset where the uncertainty is small, things appear to be approximately objective. Remember when we went from the flat Earth to the spherical Earth?
It's a big deal change.
We keep that flat Earth. That's what all the surveyors do. They all work with a flat Earth. When this property was surveyed, it was all done on a flat Earth model. You know, flat Earth is a good approximation for short distances. Long distances, and there's problems because you have curvature in the Earth. But for short distances, flat's good. So we still use flat Earth in our technology and in our surveying. That's the way things are laid out. So you don't throw the old concept out. The old paradigm doesn't go away. It just becomes an approximation within a subset. When we get to relativity and quantum mechanics, we didn't throw out Newton. Newtonian physics is still there. Matter of fact, probably 90% of all the physics that's done in the world outside of universities is all Newtonian physics. You know, it's the applied physics. It's mostly Newtonian physics. But we say Newtonian physics is an approximation. It's just approximately true in that subset where things aren't moving too fast and they're not too small. Then it works fine. Well, now we have objective reality. Objective reality, see, turns out just to be an approximation. In that realm where there's very little uncertainty, it's approximately objective, and we have approximately objective reality, and that's the reality that physics works in. And they'll still work in that. So it's not that you throw objective reality out and say, we don't need that anymore, we got a bigger picture. It just becomes a subset within a larger view. And this is the way it always works. You know, it steps up that way. So the physicists will still be doing their physics in this approximately objective reality. We've already learned this in some minor ways, and that is we have what we call the hard sciences and the soft sciences. The hard sciences works with things that have very little uncertainty. Stuff, right? You drop a ball, you know, how fast does it fall? Stuff. The soft sciences work with things that have a lot of uncertainty. We're talking about psychology, sociology, economics, because these have to do with people, and if there isn't anything that has more uncertainty than people, right? Because we have free will and we can do all kinds of things for all sorts of reasons. So we have learned that the mind affects the results, right? That's placebo effect. The mind affects the results. Well, what do we do about that? Double blind, triple blind. We have to do all these experiments with double and triple blind in the soft sciences because the mind affects the results. Intent affects what happens. So if some experimenters know that this experiment, what it's going on, and that, you know, these people know this much and these people know that, and you're trying to figure out whether this pill works or that pill works or whatever, if you know that, you'll bias the results. So the only way to, because your mind will change it, the only way to make that decent science is to make it double or triple blind, so that nobody knows, so it's not affecting the results as much. But there's still, some people at least know the bigger picture of what's going on, and it still affects the results some, because there's still some uncertainty. So we've kind of known that. We've already separated our soft science. Okay, so we already have learned that that when we expand to a bigger view and get outside of the stuff with small uncertainty, that we suddenly have to use different methods. You see, the scientific method doesn't work anymore. The scientific method, the jewel that brought us out of, idiocy in the Dark Ages to where we are now, there's an assumption there that reality is objective. The scientific method only is pertinent to an objective reality. Anybody can do the experiment anywhere and you have to get the same answer, right? Well, reality isn't like that. So the scientific method only applies to the subset. So when we get to things like placebo effect, or people doing sociology or psychology, other things like that, that doesn't work. Anybody doing an experiment gets the same answer? No. It depends on who does it, what they're thinking, what the people know. It depends on information suddenly. Well, we try to fix that with getting rid of the information, doing double-blind things so that nobody does know. But we've already kind of stepped into that larger picture beyond the stuff, and we realize scientific method doesn't work. So scientific methods, you see, is just a good way of working with a subset of the larger reality. And the scientists, unfortunately, have never been able to take that step and realize that this objective world that they believe in, and it's just a scientific belief, is just a subset, and it's about to be replaced with a bigger picture, just like we replaced the flat Earth with a round, we replaced Newtonian mechanics with relativity, and now we're about to replace objective reality with a larger picture.
Well, that's a good place to stop, and let's go to part 2 with the question, what is going to be replaced? What is going to replace the realities that we know right now?